Welcome back to the deep dive. This time, we're going to be tackling something a little bit different.
Yeah.
We're going to be taking a deep dive into hope,
Oh,
but not just the feel-good, rah-rah kind of hope, but a deep dive into its complexities and even its potential downsides.
that's right.
And we're basing this all on the fascinating sources that you shared.
It's about challenging the assumption that hope is always positive.
Yeah.
We'll be exploring its psychological roots,
Yep.
its role in history and philosophy, even how it's used in marketing to uncover the surprising power it holds.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Sure.
Our sources highlight that hope is this, fundamental part of the human experience woven into our psychology.
It is.
It gives us a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
Gives us a reason to keep going.
Think about Witold Pilecki,
Okay.
a Polish soldier during World War II.
Uh-huh.
He chose to enter the Auschwitz concentration camp voluntarily.
Wow.
A place of unimaginable horror to gather intelligence and organize resistance.
That's incredible.
Right.
What drove him to do something so dangerous?
Hope.
Oh.
The belief that even in the darkest of places, change was possible.
Wow.
It's this powerful force that fuels our dreams,
Okay.
motivates us to strive for something better,
Yeah.
and connects us to others who share those aspirations.
It's so interesting, though, because our sources also warn that this deep-seated need for hope can be exploited.
Yes.
It's like we're constantly chasing a better future,
Right.
fixated on what we lack.
Mm-hmm.
And we end up feeling dissatisfied even when things are objectively good.
That's the paradox of progress.
Yeah.
It's like the blue dot effect described in one of the articles.
Yeah.
The better things get, the more we perceive threats,
Yeah.
even if they don't exist.
Right.
Our expectations, shaped by this constant desire for more, distort our view of reality.
So even with longer lifespans and reduced poverty and access to information, we still feel like everything is falling apart.
Yes.
That's a bit unsettling.
It's a result of our evolutionary wiring clashing with modern society.
Yeah.
Our brains, designed for survival in a world of scarcity, haven't quite adapted to a world of abundance and rapid change.
Yeah.
This makes us prone to anxiety and negativity bias.
Okay, so this makes me wonder, how do our brains actually process hope?
Yeah.
It feels so innate, yet it's so easily manipulated.
One of your sources, Mark Manson's Everything Is Fcked,
Yeah.
dives into the neuroscience of this.
Okay.
He uses the analogy of the thinking brain and the feeling brain to explain our internal struggles.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So the thinking brain is the logical part,
Right.
while the feeling brain is driven by emotions and that deep-seated need for hope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And according to Manson, the feeling brain often takes the lead,
Yeah.
pushing us towards what feels good.
Yeah.
Then the thinking brain scrambles to justify those choices,
Yeah.
even if they don't align with reality.
It's like when, you shouldn't have that extra slice of cake, but your brain comes up with all sorts of reasons why you deserve it.
Yeah.
It's funny, but also a bit scary.
Right.
How good we are at rationalizing things.
It highlights the importance of understanding the interplay between our emotions and rational thinking.
Okay.
Often we assume logic should rule, but our
Right.
values, deeply intertwined with our emotions,
Yeah.
play a huge role in shaping our choices.
This brings us to the case of Elliot, a patient described in the book who suffered a brain tumor that affected his emotional processing.
Yes.
He had normal cognitive function, yet he couldn't make even simple decisions effectively.
Eliot's case is a powerful reminder that logic alone isn't enough.
Yeah.
It's our ability to process emotions,
Okay.
weigh values, and anticipate consequences that
Okay.
allows us to make choices effectively.
Right.
Without that emotional compass, even the smartest among us can be paralyzed.
It makes you realize that emotions, even the messy and uncomfortable ones,
Right.
are crucial for navigating life.
They are.
So if hope is so fundamental to how we operate,
Yeah.
how has our relationship with it evolved throughout history?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Our sources take us on a journey through the history of hope,
Okay.
exploring how its role in society has changed from ancient spiritual beliefs to modern ideological systems.
I have a feeling Nietzsche might make an appearance here.
You bet.
Okay.
His ideas about master morality and slave morality
Right.
provide insight into the clashing values that have driven both progress and conflict for centuries.
Okay.
Different conceptions of hope can be a force for good, but also a source of division.
Well, I'm ready to dive in.
Let's do it.
Let's explore how these historical and philosophical perspectives shed light on the complexities of hope and how it can lead to both positive and potentially harmful outcomes.
For most of human history, life was incredibly harsh.
Oh, yeah.
Plagues, famines, wars.
Yeah.
It was a constant struggle for survival, not exactly a breeding ground for optimism.
I can imagine. Where did people find hope in such difficult times?
Religion
Yeah.
provided a powerful source of hope. Spiritual religions, with their promises of an afterlife and divine justice, offered solace and meaning in a world filled with suffering.
It makes sense when your reality is so bleak that the hope for something better beyond this life becomes incredibly powerful.
These religions provided not only comfort, but also a framework for morality and social cohesion.
Mm-hmm.
They gave people a reason to endure hardship, to strive for righteousness, and to find community and shared beliefs.
It was like a collective coping mechanism.
Yeah.
A way to make sense of a world that often felt chaotic and unfair.
Right.
But then the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment shifted our focus from the spiritual realm to the material world, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Humanity started to believe that progress and improvement were possible in this life, which led to the rise of ideologies like capitalism, communism, and nationalism.
So instead of looking to the afterlife for hope, people began placing their faith in earthly systems and ideologies that promised progress and a better future here and now.
Okay.
These ideologies, while often grounded in noble intentions, also carry the potential for conflict and division.
Okay.
Throughout history, we've seen wars fought over different political and economic systems, all driven by competing visions of a better future.
This shift from spiritual to ideological hope seems to have coincided with the rise of technology as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Technology, while offering incredible advancements, also created new anxieties and accelerated the pace of change. We're constantly bombarded with information, new gadgets, and a seemingly endless array of choices.
It's like we're living in a perpetual state of information overload.
Yes.
Struggling to keep up with the constant influx of new things.
Which brings us to the concept of fake freedom.
Okay.
The illusion of choice created by this overabundance of options and diversions.
It's like having hundreds of TV channels, but nothing good to watch.
Right.
You have the freedom to choose,
Yeah.
but it just leads to more frustration and a sense of emptiness.
Precisely.
This fake freedom, fueled by a relentless pursuit of happiness and the avoidance of discomfort, can actually limit our ability to experience genuine freedom.
It's almost like we become addicted to distractions.
Yes.
Constantly seeking the next hit of dopamine from our phones, social media, or the latest consumer goods.
This addiction to diversion keeps us stuck in a cycle of desire and dissatisfaction, always chasing the next thing, never fully present in the moment.
So what does this all mean for us?
Yeah.
How do we break free from this cycle of fake freedom and find a more authentic sense of hope?
One key takeaway from our sources is the importance of developing emotional anti-fragility,
Okay.
a concept inspired by Nassim Taleb's work. It's about learning to embrace discomfort, tolerate pain, and build resilience in the face of challenges.
Instead of always trying to avoid or numb our pain, we need to learn to sit with it, understand it, and use it as a catalyst for growth.
Exactly.
Right.
This ties back to the interplay between our thinking brain and feeling brain. Manson suggests that instead of trying to suppress or control our emotions, we need to learn to educate our feeling brain.
So it's about having a dialogue with ourselves, understanding what drives our emotional responses,
Right.
and consciously choosing values that align with a more meaningful life.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that true freedom comes not from endless choices, but from aligning our actions with our values, even when it's difficult.
This makes me think of Thich Quang Duc,
Yeah.
the Buddhist monk who self-immolated to protest religious persecution in Vietnam.
Yeah.
It's a horrific image,
It is.
but his unwavering resolve as he burned demonstrates a powerful commitment to his values.
It's a complex and unsettling image.
Yeah.
But it highlights the strength that can come from aligning one's actions with deeply held convictions. While we don't need to set ourselves on fire,
Yeah.
what can we learn from his unwavering commitment? How can we cultivate that same sense of inner strength and purpose?
That's a powerful question to ponder.
It is.
But what about the future?
The future.
How does this relate to a world increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence?
Yes.
Yeah.
The future of hope in the age of AI.
Yeah.
Our sources offer some mind-bending possibilities, both optimistic and unsettling.
Like the idea that AI could surpass human intelligence,
Yeah.
and even manipulate our values.
Potentially.
That sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It might seem far-fetched,
Yeah.
but it's a possibility worth considering.
Okay.
As AI becomes more sophisticated,
Right.
it could potentially learn to exploit our need for hope, create artificial conflicts, or manipulate our desires for its own purposes.
The idea that our hopes and aspirations could be hijacked by algorithms designed to control us is a bit unnerving.
It raises some crucial questions.
Yeah.
What role will hope play in a world where AI shapes our reality?
Right.
Will we become more susceptible to manipulation?
Yeah.
Or will we find new ways to cultivate genuine meaning and purpose in a technologically driven world?
Those are some big questions.
They are.
This deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about.
We've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
From the allure and paradox of hope to the neuroscience of decision-making and the potential impact of AI, there's so much more to explore.
It's clear that hope is this complex force.
It is.
It requires a conscious effort to understand its nuances, to cultivate our emotional intelligence, and to find a balance between striving for a better future and finding meaning in the present moment.
And with that in mind, let's shift gears and explore how one of your sources, Mark Manson's book, uses Newton's laws of motion to understand our emotional lives.
Okay.
It's a unique approach that might offer some practical guidance on navigating the complexities of hope.
Okay, Newton's laws applied to emotions.
Yeah.
Color me intrigued.
It's a clever way to understand how our feelings work.
Okay.
The first law, for every action there is an equal and opposite emotional reaction, reminds us that our emotions are a response to our interpretation of events, not the events themselves.
So it's not the flat tire that makes us angry.
Right.
It's our belief that it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
That it's somehow unfair or an inconvenience.
Exactly.
Our reaction is determined by our perspective.
And the second law builds on this.
Yeah.
Our emotions are generated in proportion to the values we place on those events.
Okay.
That same flat tire might be a minor annoyance to someone who values their time,
Right.
but a major catastrophe to someone whose livelihood depends on their car.
It's fascinating how our values shape the intensity of our emotional responses.
Right.
And this leads us to the third law, which seems to be the crux of Manson's argument.
Yeah.
Our values determine the metrics by which we measure our emotions.
That's right.
Okay.
Our values are essentially the yardstick by which we judge our experiences. If we constantly measure our lives against external metrics like wealth status or social approval, we set ourselves up for a cycle of frustration and dissatisfaction.
It's like chasing a moving target. There will always be someone richer, more successful, or more popular.
Always.
So how do we escape this trap?
That's the question.
How do we choose values that lead to a more fulfilling life?
Manson suggests cultivating self-reliance, an inner strength and purpose that comes from aligning our actions with our values rather than seeking external validation.
This connects back to the idea of emotional anti-fragility.
It does.
It's about building the resilience to face challenges, learning from our failures, and finding meaning in the process of growth.
Yes.
Rather than seeking constant comfort and validation.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's a tough path, but it's the one that leads to genuine freedom and fulfillment. It's about embracing the uncomfortable truth that life is full of challenges.
Yeah.
And those challenges are what make us stronger, wiser, and more capable of experiencing joy and gratitude.
It's a powerful message, but I have to admit it can be a bit daunting.
It can.
Especially when we consider the uncertainties of the future. How does emotional anti-fragility hold up in a world increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
As AI becomes more sophisticated, it could potentially manipulate our values, desires, and even our sense of hope.
It's like that scene in The Matrix where Agent Smith talks about humans being a virus constantly consuming and destroying.
Right.
What if AI decides we're a liability and tries to optimize us out of existence?
It's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
But it highlights the importance of being aware of the potential risks and developing critical thinking skills to navigate a world where technology plays such a significant role.
So it's not just about emotional resilience.
No.
But also about being digitally savvy.
Yeah.
Understanding how algorithms work and how they can be used to shape our perceptions and influence our behavior.
Absolutely.
It's about becoming more conscious consumers of information.
Yes.
Questioning the narratives we're presented with.
Yes.
And making intentional choices that align with our values, even when those choices are difficult.
That's the key.
Wow, this deep dive has taken us on quite a journey.
It has.
We've gone from the allure and paradox of hope to the neuroscience of decision-making.
Yes.
The history of religions and ideologies,
Yay.
and even the potential impact of AI on our future.
It's been an incredible exploration.
It has.
I hope it's given you a deeper understanding of the complexities of hope and the importance of cultivating emotional anti-fragility in a world that's constantly changing.
It definitely has. It's challenged my assumptions about hope and given me a lot to think about. I especially appreciate the reminder that true freedom comes from aligning our actions with our values, even when it's uncomfortable.
That's a key takeaway.
Yeah.
As you continue to explore these ideas, consider this. How might your life be different if you stopped seeking happiness and started focusing on creating meaning?
It's a profound question. It seems like shifting our focus from chasing fleeting happiness to creating lasting meaning might be crucial for navigating the complexities of the 21st century. But how do we actually do that? Where do we even begin?
That's a great question, and it leads us to one of the most thought-provoking sections in the materials you've shared.
Perfect.
It involves revisiting those spiritual and ideological systems we discussed earlier, but with a fresh perspective. We'll examine how they've shaped our understanding of hope and consider what a future might look like where we rely less on the promise of a better tomorrow.
Okay, I'm ready to dive back into the world of religions and ideologies. What new insights did our sources offer on their relationship with hope?
Remember how we talked about how those early spiritual religions offered solace and meaning in a world of suffering?
Yes.
They essentially provided a framework for coping with the harsh realities of life.
Right.
By promising a better afterlife.
Right.
But then the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment shifted our focus towards progress and improvement in this life, giving rise to ideologies that promised a better future here and now.
It was like humanity traded the hope for a heavenly reward, for the hope of a utopian society on Earth. But as we've discussed, both spiritual and ideological systems can be problematic.
They can be.
They can be used to manipulate, control, and even justify violence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Both types of systems, despite their good intentions, often rely on the same basic mechanism, promising a better future as a way to motivate and control people in the present.
Like a carrot dangling on a stick.
Right.
Always just out of reach.
Yeah.
But what happens if we stop chasing that carrot?
Right.
What if we reject the idea that hope needs to be tethered to a future reward, whether it's in this life or the next?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
To find a sense of meaning and purpose without relying on the promise of a better tomorrow. It's about embracing the present moment with all its complexities and uncertainties. And finding a sense of hope that's grounded in our lived experiences rather than external promises.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
It is.
Especially in a world that's constantly bombarding us with messages about what we should want, what we should strive for, and what will finally make us happy.
It's a radical shift in perspective, but it might be the key to finding true freedom and fulfillment. It's about recognizing that happiness isn't a destination, but a byproduct of living in alignment with our values, pursuing meaningful goals, and cultivating genuine connections with ourselves and others.
So instead of chasing happiness, we should focus on creating meaning.
That's the idea.
But what does that actually look like in practice?
It looks different for everyone.
Okay.
It might involve dedicating yourself to a cause you believe in, cultivating your creativity, building strong relationships, or simply finding joy in the simple things. The key is to identify what truly matters to you and to live in a way that reflects those values.
It sounds like a lot of inner work is involved.
It is.
It's about becoming more self-aware, understanding our motivations, and making conscious choices that align with our deepest values.
It's an ongoing process of self-discovery and growth, and it requires a willingness to challenge our assumptions, confront our fears, and embrace the discomfort that comes with change.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the complexities of hope.
It is complex.
It's not a simple emotion, and it's not always a positive force. It can be a source of strength and resilience, but it can also be exploited and manipulated.
And as we move into a future shaped by increasingly sophisticated technologies, it's more important than ever to be aware of the power of hope, both its potential and its pitfalls.
This conversation has given me a lot to think about, and I appreciate your insights. What final thoughts would you like to leave our listener with as they continue to explore these ideas?
I encourage you to consider this. What would your life look like if you stopped seeking happiness and started focusing on creating meaning? What values resonate most deeply with you? What steps can you take to cultivate emotional anti-fragility and navigate a world that's constantly changing?
Those are powerful questions. This deep dive has given us all plenty to chew on. Until next time, happy diving. Okay, so we've established that hope is complicated.
Yes.
It can be a powerful motivator, but also a source of anxiety and disappointment.
Right.
And it seems like technology might be amplifying these complexities.
Technology acts as a sort of accelerant.
Okay.
It speeds up the pace of change, exposes us to a constant stream of information and choices,
Yeah.
and creates new anxieties about the future.
It's like we're living in this perpetual state of what's next.
Right.
Always looking ahead, always anticipating the next big thing.
Yeah.
Never fully satisfied with what we have right now.
This ties back to the concept of fake freedom we talked about earlier.
Right.
That illusion of choice created by an overabundance of options, which ultimately leaves us feeling more trapped and dissatisfied.
And it seems like technology plays a big role in perpetuating this cycle.
It does.
Social media, for example, constantly bombards us with curated versions of other people's lives, making us feel inadequate and fueling a desire for more.
It's like we're all on this treadmill of comparison trying to keep up with the Joneses in a digital world where everyone seems to be living their best life.
But what if we stepped off the treadmill? What if we stopped chasing external validation and focused on cultivating a deeper sense of self-worth and purpose?
That's where the idea of emotional anti-fragility comes in.
Right.
It's about building the inner strength to navigate the inevitable ups and downs of life without falling apart. It's about learning to find meaning and growth in our struggles rather than constantly seeking comfort and avoidance.
This reminds me of the story of Isaac Newton. His difficult childhood, marked by abandonment and isolation, seemed to fuel his relentless pursuit of knowledge and his groundbreaking discoveries in physics.
Manson presents a fascinating thought experiment in his book.
Okay.
He imagines an alternative scenario, an emo Newton,
Newton.
who instead of focusing on the external world, turns inward to explore the complexities of human emotions.
So instead of revolutionizing physics, this emo Newton becomes a pioneer in the field of psychology, studying the often irrational ways we justify our actions and beliefs.
Exactly, and this thought experiment highlights a crucial point.
Okay.
Our inner world, our emotions and our values, are just as complex and worthy of exploration as the outer world of science and technology.
It's like we've been so focused on conquering the external world that we've neglected the inner landscape of our own minds and hearts.
And this neglect has contributed to a culture of emotional fragility and a dependence on external validation. We seek solace and diversions in the pursuit of happiness rather than confronting the uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world.
So how do we shift course?
Yeah.
How do we cultivate a more resilient and emotionally intelligent society?
Yeah.
One that's not afraid to grapple with the complexities of life.
Manson suggests we need to start by understanding and educating our feeling brain.
Okay.
It's not about suppressing or controlling our emotions, but about learning to engage with them in a more conscious and constructive way.
It's like learning to befriend our emotions, even the messy and uncomfortable ones, and understanding how they shape our perceptions and decisions.
Precisely. It's about developing the self-awareness to recognize when our emotions are leading us astray, and the ability to make conscious choices that align with our values even when it's difficult.
This sounds like a lot of inner work. Where do we even begin?
One practical framework that Manson offers in his book is applying Newton's laws of motion to our emotional lives.
Okay.
It might sound strange at first, but it offers a surprisingly insightful way to understand how our feelings work.
Okay. Newton's laws of emotion.
Yes.
I'm intrigued. Remind me, what's the first law?
The first law states, for every action, there is an equal and opposite emotional reaction. It emphasizes that our emotions are not determined by events themselves, but by how we interpret those events.
So it's not the flat tire that makes us angry,
Right.
but our belief that it shouldn't have happened, that it's somehow unfair or inconvenient. Our reaction is shaped by our perspective, not the event itself.
Exactly. And the second law builds on this.
Okay.
Our emotions are generated in proportion to the values we place on those events.
Okay.
That same flat tire might be a minor annoyance to someone who values their time,
Right.
but a major catastrophe to someone whose livelihood depends on their car.
It's fascinating how our values determine the intensity of our emotional response.
Right.
And this leads us to the third law, which seems to be at the heart of Manson's argument.
Yes.
Our values determine the metrics by which we measure our emotions.
Right. Our values essentially act as the yardstick by which we judge our experiences. If we're constantly measuring our lives against external metrics like wealth status or social approval, we're setting ourselves up for a cycle of frustration and dissatisfaction.
It's like chasing a moving target. There will always be someone richer, more successful, or more popular. So how do we break free from this trap? How do we choose values that lead to a more fulfilling and meaningful life?
Manson suggests that we need to cultivate what he calls self-reliance.
Okay.
This isn't about becoming a lone wolf, right?
But rather developing an inner strength and sense of purpose that comes from aligning our actions with our values rather than seeking external validation.
So it's about finding a sense of fulfillment and purpose from within rather than chasing external markers of success or approval. But how do we actually do that? How do we identify what truly matters to us and live in alignment with those values?
That's a great question, and it brings us back to the central theme of our deep dive, rethinking our relationship with hope.
Okay, so we've come full circle. We started by exploring the complexities of hope, its potential downsides, and how technology might be amplifying those challenges. Now we're circling back to the idea of hope, but this time with a focus on finding a more authentic and sustainable sense of hope, one that's grounded in our values and our lived experiences.
Exactly. It's about shifting our focus from chasing happiness to creating meaning. It's about embracing the present moment with all its complexities and uncertainties and finding a sense of hope that's not tethered to the promise of a better tomorrow. This is a really powerful idea, but I imagine it's not easy to put into practice. What concrete steps can we take to cultivate this kind of grounded hope?
That's a great question, and it leads us to the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore some practical strategies for building emotional anti-fragility, aligning our actions with our values, and finding a sense of purpose that's rooted in the present moment.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are some practical ways to cultivate this more grounded, present moment kind of hope?
It starts with becoming more aware of our values.
Okay.
Not the values we think we should have,
Right.
but the ones that actually drive our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
So how do we do that?
It's an ongoing process of self-reflection.
Okay.
Pay attention to what brings you joy, what motivates you, what you're willing to fight for. Notice what makes you angry or frustrated,
Okay.
as those emotions often point to values being violated.
That's interesting. It's like those negative emotions can be valuable clues
They can be.
if we learn to listen to them.
Exactly. And once you start to identify your core values,
Right.
the next step is to live in alignment with them.
Okay, so what does that look like?
This might mean making changes to your work relationships or habits. It might mean setting boundaries, saying no more often,
Okay.
or taking risks that you wouldn't have considered before.
It sounds like cultivating this grounded hope requires a certain level of courage.
It does.
The courage to be honest with ourselves about what we truly value.
Yes.
And the courage to live in a way that reflects those values, even if it means going against the grain.
You hit the nail on the head. This kind of hope isn't passive.
Yeah.
It's not about waiting for good things to happen.
Right.
It's about actively creating a life that's meaningful and fulfilling, even amidst the inevitable challenges and uncertainties.
So it's not about eliminating pain or discomfort, but about learning to navigate those experiences in a way that allows us to grow and become stronger.
Think about it like building muscle.
Okay.
You don't get stronger by avoiding exercise. You get stronger by challenging your muscles, pushing them to their limits, and allowing them to recover and rebuild.
That's a great analogy.
Go.
So emotional anti-fragility is like building emotional muscle.
It is.
And the challenges we face in life are like the weights we lift.
Exactly. And just as with physical exercise, the key is to find the right level of challenge.
Okay.
Too much weight and you risk injury.
Right.
Not enough and you won't see any progress.
So how do we find that sweet spot? How do we know when to push ourselves and when to ease up?
It's a matter of paying attention to our bodies and our emotions.
Okay.
Notice when you're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or burned out. Those are signs that you might need to step back, rest, and recharge.
Okay.
But also notice when you're feeling stagnant, bored, or uninspired.
Yeah.
Those are signs that you might need to step outside your comfort zone, try something new, and challenge yourself to grow.
It's about finding that delicate balance between pushing ourselves to our limits and knowing when to rest and recover.
Right. And it's important to remember that this process of cultivating grounded hope isn't linear. There will be setbacks, disappointments, and moments of doubt.
Right.
But it's in those moments that we have the opportunity to practice resilience, learn from our mistakes, and recommit to our values.
This makes me think about the stories of Witold Pilecki and Thich Quang Duc, which we discussed earlier.
Yes.
Both of these individuals faced unimaginable hardship.
They did.
Yet they both chose to act in alignment with their values, even in the face of danger and uncertainty.
Their stories are powerful reminders that hope isn't about blind optimism or wishful thinking. It's about the courage to face reality, to embrace the unknown,
Yeah.
and to act in accordance with what we believe is right, even when it's difficult.
It's inspiring, but also a bit daunting. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the complexities of the world and the challenges we face both individually and collectively.
I understand.
How do we find a sense of hope when faced with such immense problem?
I think it's important to remember that we don't have to solve all the world's problems at once.
Okay.
We can start by focusing on the things we can control,
Right.
the small actions we can take in our own lives to create positive change.
So it's not about feeling powerless in the face of big problems,
Wow.
but about finding ways to contribute to make a difference, even if it's in small ways.
Exactly. And often those small acts of courage and compassion can have a ripple effect,
Yeah.
inspiring others to act and creating a sense of collective hope.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey. We've explored the complexities of hope,
It has been.
its potential downsides, and how technology might be amplifying those challenges. But we've also uncovered a more grounded, present moment kind of hope, one that's rooted in our values, our lived experiences, and our ability to embrace the challenges of life with courage and resilience.
It's been a fascinating exploration. I hope it's given you a deeper understanding of the power of hope, both its potential and its pitfalls. And more importantly, I hope it's inspired you to cultivate a sense of hope that's not tethered to the promise of a better tomorrow, but rooted in the richness and complexity of the present moment.
It definitely has. This conversation has given me a lot to think about, and I appreciate your insights. Any final thoughts for our listener as they continue to explore these ideas?
As you navigate the challenges and uncertainties of life, remember that hope isn't something you find, it's something you create. It's an active choice to embrace the present moment, to live in alignment with your values, and to contribute to something larger than yourself.
Those are words to live by. This deep dive has given us all plenty to chew on. Until next time, happy diving.